Right, hi everyone. I just thought I'd do one last finale thing just before your exam tomorrow, just so you feel like you kind of left no stone unturned. So, this is how to answer the 25-mark question. But I'm going to start off by answering a question on, what's that? On a demerit good. Because that's my favourite sort of question. And then just after that, I'll say how you should answer it for a merit good instead. And then after that, I'll say how you should answer it for one of the horrible questions like buffer stocks. But to be honest, I'm hoping that you'll try and pick the one on demerit or merit goods. There's likely to be something on either demerit goods, merit goods, or externalities. Now, if the question's on demerit goods, there are two kind of questions they can ask you. Or to be honest, if it's on any sort of market failure, there's only two questions. They'll either say, should the government intervene? Or they might say, how should they? Now, if they say how should they, what they normally do is they'll say one way they could intervene. So they might say, one way they could intervene is by using taxes. Do you agree with this? And obviously you're going to be able to talk through that. Now, if it says, should the government intervene, I'm going to pretend the question says this for this run through. And it's slightly different, but the answer is pretty much the same apart from one opening paragraph. So if the question says, should the government intervene, I'm going to do this whole example. And I'm going to pretend the whole example is about the use of alcohol. So we're saying, I think that's how you spell alcohol, No, I missed that, I know. I had to go and Google that. That's pretty embarrassing, but I know who cares. So, alcohol. And we're talking about alcohol as let's face it, it's a demerit good. The question would be, should the government intervene in the market for alcohol? Now, the first thing, if it says should they, and it's this question, it's a slightly different answer to how should they. What you've got to start your answer off, your first opening paragraph would be, no, they shouldn't. And you're going to say they shouldn't intervene because the market is what I like to call arsey. And this is why the market's good. Now, if you can do at least one or two lines on each one of these, you're in good shape. So I start off by saying the market's good because it allocates resources efficiently. So it's very good at deciding who gets what. And basically, it's really quick to do it because whoever's got the most money gets the product. If it wasn't like that, it'd be much harder to decide who gets what. Secondly, it rations things very well. How does the market ration things? As things start running out like oil, the market pushes the price up and that rations it. It also provides signals. It tells producers what they should produce. So producers know they should produce whatever people demand. If it wasn't for the market, producers would be making stuff and they would have no idea whether people want it or not. And finally, it provides incentives to produce stuff. And the incentive to produce stuff in the market is you get profit. Okay, so that was your opening paragraph. You said, no, they shouldn't intervene. They should leave the market alone. And now you straight away go from that and saying, since the second part, you say, but they're going to have to intervene because there is a market failure. Now, I don't know what your definition is for market failure, but my one is, it's when the what is it? It's when the price mechanism fails to allocate scarce resources to a socially optimum level. Now, that's my definition, but you've obviously got something else maybe. So after you said market failure, you then say the market failure in this question, and it's a demerit good. And then you define what a demerit good is. And I say a demerit good is a good that is overconsumed in the free market due to a lack of information about the negative effects. And it also has negative externalities. That's what I like to say, but that's me. Right, once you've said that, you could draw the diagram showing a negative externality. So you could do that one if you wanted. But to be honest, I'd try and get on with the question now, because I'd be worried about time. So I've done all this. I've said what the market failure is. I've said demerit good. I've said they shouldn't intervene. Now I'm going to say this is how they should intervene. Now, because I've already said like one opening paragraph, I only need to go through two ways they could intervene. And I have four options in my opinion. And I call it, let's intervene. So I like the government to think, that's my little mnemonic, it's let's in. And it's like, let's intervene. So the first thing they could do is they could legislate. The second is they could educate. The third is tax. And the fourth is use subsidies. Now, because we're talking about a demerit good, okay, of the four, which one is the one you wouldn't go for? You're not going to go for subsidy because it's a demerit good. And obviously you could subsidise an alternative, but for the minute, let's just not go there. Let's just say there's three options at the minute. Now, of those three options, which ones am I going to pick if I can only pick two in time? And now I'm going to get rid of educate because it's got no diagram. So my two options are legislate or tax. Now, what I don't want you to write about is like a ban, because a ban's just, I mean, what the hell are you going to say? Right, they should ban it. It's rubbish. So instead, for legislation, you're going to go for a minimum price. And for tax, well, obviously you're going to go for a tax. So this is how you're going to do it. Starting off, I like to start off with tax. You've got to start off by saying why a tax would be good. So a tax would be good, and you draw your diagram, because if they tax it, remember to label all this, sit down, and then supply would go to the left, because left is less. If they tax it, what's that? As you can see, the price will go up, and the quantity demanded should go down because it's more expensive. And this is ideal for the country, because that means less is made of it. And we don't want as many people having alcohol because it's bad for the country, or bad for society. So you say all the reasons why tax would work, and once you've explained why tax wouldn't work, and you really explain it, you'll get all your analysis points. But at the minute, you're not going to get full marks unless you start saying, on the other hand. So we've said a tax is good, and we've explained why. We're now going to say, on the other hand. And the reason why a tax, on the other hand, is my R buts. So you can say, we could tax R but. And the big R but for a tax is, you can make demand inelastic. The reason why you know on that diagram it's inelastic is because it looks a bit like an eye. Now, it's not perfectly inelastic. I've tried to do a bit of an angle on it, but not very well. Right, as you can see, if demand was inelastic, would this tax actually work? You can see now the tax wouldn't work because quantity demanded wouldn't change much. It's probably because people are addicted to alcohol, so they can't get out of it. So your R but would be, this tax wouldn't work because demand wouldn't change enough. But if you want to go absolutely enormous now, you can say the R but to your R but is the only good thing about a tax is they're going to get lots of tax revenue. So that could arguably be positive. So let's just recap what we've done so far in this essay of should they intervene. We've said no because of RC. Then we said yes because there is market failure. And we said yes is market failure, and the market failure is it is a demerit good. We've gone for one way of solving it, which has been a minimum price. And then we've R-butted the minimum price. Now for me, at this point you could pretty much be on full marks, but there's a couple more things you've got to do. I like to have another alternative. So instead of saying minimum price, we haven't said minimum price, we've said tax. So instead of a tax, we're now going to say minimum price. So how would a minimum price go? Well, first of all, we draw a diagram for minimum price, and we just have, sit down again, price and quantity. So the price in the market may be, we'll just put P1, could be in there, and Q1. Doesn't really matter what you label these. Then we've gone for P2. So the minimum price is above the equilibrium. And it shows here that, right now, because of this minimum price, less people have demanded it than they did before, because it's more expensive. But the downside is, the other thing is more people would supply, but let's not worry about that for the minute. Okay, why would this work? Because the price is higher, therefore less people would want it. So if you think about it in a shop, you'd see a minimum price on alcohol, so alcohol wouldn't be allowed to be sold for less than £5, which would hopefully stop people from wanting to buy it. Now, after we've said that, we want to have some R buts to this. So what would be the R buts? What are the reasons why a minimum price might not be good? And I'd rather you just went with a couple of these and explained them well. So the first R but I would always say is a minimum price could be regressive. I mean, you could say this about a tax as well, but it'd be regressive because it would hurt the less well-off people more than the more well-off people. So, more well-off people might be spending 40 quid on champagne. They don't care. I mean, a minimum price wouldn't affect them at all. It's the people who are buying White Lightning that would be affected. Secondly, you could say it wouldn't work if the minimum price was set below the equilibrium. Okay, now we've done that. We said 2 R buts for both of them. So, in the exam, they asked, should they intervene? We've said, no, they shouldn't. Then we said, yes, they should, and we said the downsides of each, yes, they should. Now, as long as you've referenced the data, personally, I think you're on 21, or maybe 22 out of 25. But to do a grand finale, you need a final, a final judgment. So I say, when they're deciding what they should do with the market, they should think about the 3 E's. They should decide which policy is most efficient, Now, you could argue it'd be more efficient to leave the market alone. So you'd say the most efficient thing would be to not intervene. You then say which one would be most effective. Can't say it. And you might say, well, I don't know what you might say. You might say a tax could be really effective as long as the tax is enough to try and stop people from wanting to do it. Finally, you say which one is most equitable. Now, we know the problem with a tax and with a minimum price is they're both not very equitable. They hit the less well-off people more. So we could argue that's not a very good idea. But as long as you go through those three things, efficient, effective and equitable, and come up with maybe 2 lines on which one you think could be more or less, that's a really nice finale. I mean, the great thing, after you've said all that is, it's probably not a great idea for the government to intervene unless they know what they're doing, because it could cause government failure. But for me, that'd be a nice finale. I mean, there's not much else needs to be said there. If you do all that, I think that's going to be a good 23, 24, 25 out of 25. Right, so I know what you're asking now. You're saying that's all lovely and good for a demerit good. But firstly, I'm going to answer, how would this change if it was, instead of being should they intervene, if it was a question on how should they? If it's like that, then you'd RC, what's that? You don't need to do. That's gone. Because they're saying how should they intervene. So there's no need for saying RC. So instead of saying RC, instead of doing two alternatives, you're going to do 3. So let's go back to let's intervene. Legislate, educate, tax or subsidy. After you've done the legislation of the minimum price and the tax, I'd then do education. I'd say education would work because people would know about how bad this product is for them. And then you'd say a couple of R buts, like it can be really expensive or people might not care about what they're hearing, anything like that. So that's the only difference. If it says how should they, you don't need RC, and instead you go for a third alternative. Okay, so the next question you asked me is, how would I answer it if it was a merit good instead of a demerit good? So you still have your let's intervene, but instead of saying taxes, we're going to get rid of that. You'd say subsidies, and you explain why a subsidy is good. Then you say why a subsidy is bad. I mean, obviously, subsidy is bad because it costs lots of money and we're in debt. And instead of saying a minimum price, you'd say a maximum price. And, you know, one easy thing you can say about a maximum price, the problem is there'll be shortages. Because as much as the price is lower, so more people would want it, there's no incentive for the producer to produce it. And then obviously you've got education again, where you educate people about how good this merit good is for you. So the question's the same, you still get to go through the 3's at the end. Well, I know what you're all sitting there thinking, you think this is all well and good as long as it's a demerit good and a merit good question. And it's true, it is all well and good if it is that. But if it's one of the other ones, then you still get to follow this structure. It's just you might need to say something else instead. So if it's a question about prices going up and down, then you can talk about buffer stock. If it's a question where the whole way through the question they said something like, is a ban the best way to get rid of cigarettes? Then you can still do your let's intervene. So you can still do let's intervene if they actually give you an example. It's just that you have to do their example first. Then after you've done their example, you can do 2 of your own examples. I'd always say do legislate and tax because those 2 have got diagrams. Right, that's kind of my quick run through. I'm hoping that's quite useful for you. If you've got any problems with that at all, well, there's not much you can do about it now. It's before tomorrow, so let me know if you have got any problems, but good luck tomorrow.